Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
How was your weekend?
It was nice. Our daughter was home for spring break, so we took her back to Philadelphia this weekend.
With stuff full of with money and food, ramen noodles and
food for sure.
Yeah.
We got to see Alex too.
Someday you're going to write the book on raising happy children.
Yes,
Because you've got two happy children.
And your daughter's home now too.
Anna's back and happy and getting up early in the morning. For a college student, not bad. Yeah.
It's always nice to have them back in the house.
It is. It feels like a full house. Well, in just a minute, our Morning Light panel will tackle a challenging topic in our headlines.
But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. A Pennsylvania pastor lost his wife 15 years ago in a tragic accident. The couple was married for 34 years. Hear how this devastating loss led him to begin a program that helps widows and widowers learn how to process their grief.
It's an extraordinary story.
It is, really.
Well, how is it possible we have hundreds, even thousands of social media friends? We see their pictures, we know their kids' names, and with a little sleuthing, I'll bet we can at least track down a few of our friends from kindergarten. But the most recent Gallup survey on loneliness finds 1 in 5 of us feel lonely, get this, most of the day. What does it mean that so many of us don't have anyone close enough to pray with and share our hopes and even fears?
That is very, very sad.
It's significant, and that number does not appear to be getting any smaller.
Well, most of us say having a close friend is important to living well. In fact, one survey ranks the need for friendship far higher than the importance of being married or having a lot of money. The good news, a poll of Americans born between 1925 and 2006 reveals 83% have a best friend, which is good news. The flip side, that leaves nearly 20% without one. So what are the consequences of living life alone, and how can we help to change that reality?
I think we don't realize the distance between big events happening in our lives and not being able to process it with somebody.
That is true.
And maybe you've seen those viral videos of teenagers trying to figure out where to put the stamp on the envelope. Have you seen it for real?
I have not.
It's kind of funny. But when was the last time you sent a letter? Not a text, not an email. A card probably counts.
Not a bill.
Not a bill, but a letter, typed or written. At last check, only a third of us wrote one in the last year. And that number grows when you look at the 5-year span. Is it time for a national movement to bring back the letter? We'll take these big questions to the Morning Light panel this morning. And I know, because I've seen at least some samples of your handwriting, that this is a letter writing table. Dave Biser, welcome back. Good to have you.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Cynthia, Lyons, I've received beautiful letters from you, and I know a lot of people around Pennsylvania have received letters from you, and you've got beautiful penmanship.
Thank you.
And so do you, Michael Geer. You are a consummate letter writer. Let's not start there, though. I want to start with the bigger picture, the wide shot, which is people that do not have close, deep, personal friends relationships. I don't know why, but that seems to be a trend that's increasing. Do you see this at your church? Do you see people that are coming in looking for friendship and relationship?
We actually use that language. We use, here's a place where you can find family and find friendships. We talk about that in our small groups. We talk about that connection that's necessary and important because what they say, how many hugs do you need a day? How many words of affirmation do you need in the process of a day?
We're not a hugging culture as
well,
much as,
you're right. And I know people who won't go to a church that's huggy,
right.
Or whatever we want to call that. We use that language on purpose because we know that people are longing for that and looking for it and in need of it. And maybe they don't know that that's what's missing. And so part of our job is to point out that that's a piece that's missing.
So people that say, well, it's not a big deal. I keep my own counsel. I read books. I can get all the answers I need online. Why do you need a physical human friend? Well, why did God design us for this kind of relationship?
Well, I thought it was interesting. It's more important than being married or more important than having money. And I thought about that. And there is some truth to that, to have somebody else to discuss other things with that you may not necessarily talk to your spouse or your children about. I talk to my college roommate almost every day. And we discuss we share Bible verses together. We talk about we're in a season of life where my parents are gone, but she's struggling with some issues with her parents. We talk about things like that. So we, as much as we need a friend to talk about the great things, there's sometimes we just need somebody to talk about the not so great things as well.
So Pennsylvania Family Institute, the organization you lead, is one of those organizations that sees kind of the other end of it, what happens when people don't have a strong family, strong relationships, strong marriages. Your sense of the big picture, what's happening in the culture?
Well, as I thought about this issue, the scripture that came to my mind was from Proverbs 27, which says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend." And the notion of that is that if you have a true friendship, you're transparent with one another, they know about you, and they can help correct you or guide you when you might be going astray. And every one of us goes astray in our family life or other sorts of things. And to have a friend who can speak into your life and to say, you need to make an adjustment here. And what's happened in our society is that people tend to think, I don't want to hear hard things. I don't want anybody to be looking at the inside of me or finding out about these flaws or the sinfulness or whatever that every one of us carries. And so a friend can really be someone a true friend is someone who can really speak into your life. And people, I think, today tend to resist that. I sometimes don't like to hear things, critiques and criticisms.
Right. Have there been moments in your life when you have had a friend speak that truth into your life, that course correct?
Yeah, in a variety of different ways. One that pops into my head right now is just when a pastor, who's a good friend, just told me, you need to stop interrupting people when you talk to them.
Wow.
Like, listen more.
Right.
And that was something I needed to hear, and it didn't feel great at the moment.
Let me interrupt you there. Yeah, right.
So,
and then you're able to work on it. What about you? Have there been people in your life, Dave? I mean, you're pretty put together. I mean, people looking on the outside say, that guy doesn't have any.
Oh my gosh. And I've lost friends. The guy who was the best man at my wedding passed away several years ago. What I've discovered is that God keeps putting people into my life and allowing me to go deep with them. And that's made all the difference in the world for me.
So for somebody who's kind of set in their ways, how do you tell them to be open to a friendship and a relationship? Because there's a big risk there, right? You come and see my house, you see my clutter, my mess. Right. I have to open the curtains
physically
up.
Physically and metaphorically.
Right, see how I live. How do you stay open? What is it that you need to do to be able to be open to friendship?
I think you have to be purposeful. I think you need to do things purposefully that will enhance that relationship and friendship.
What does that mean?
One of my best friends is my neighbor, and he has the key to my house, and I have the key to his house. And there are times when we've been on vacation and we've said to them, can you go over to the house and check and make sure we turn the coffee pot off, things like that. And you build trust through those moments where you purposefully engage. We were talking in the green room about texting somebody when they come to mind. That person came to mind, and so I immediately text them and just said, hey, I thought about you today. That's purposeful. You take that moment and you do something with it that advances the relationship. Can I just tell real quick? I have a new best friend. And we celebrate Ash Wednesday, so we're doing ashes. And I realized as the pastor, I had not had anyone do my ashes. So this guy got to me, and I did the ashes on his forehead, and I grabbed his arm quick, and I said, can you do me a favor? And he said, sure. I said, can you do me? Afterwards, he gave me a hug and was in tears. He said, you have no idea what that did for me. And I said, you're right, I don't, but you do, and thank you for sharing that with me. And I allowed, it was purposeful, I allowed my friend to do something for me. And because of that, our friendship just went to a next level, right?
Yeah, right.
We just went deep, real quick, and we can't come back from that now.
So let's stay in there, this idea of deep relationships and how you build friendships. Cynthia, one of the ways that you do this is the power of letters. And I received a letter from you shortly after we met for the first time a few years ago. And it said more about you, I think, because it wasn't just an offhand, it was specific. What is the art to writing a letter, and what are we losing when we don't write letters?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I think we're missing mail. You know, what do we get in the mail?
Right.
You know, nothing. We get a bill or we get junk mail. But I remember vividly growing up and opening, or my dad saying, hey, you got a card, and what that felt like. I was saying a little bit earlier, my grandfather typed a letter to his children. They got a letter when they were in college every single day. Every single day. And then it became our family and his grandchildren. And in that letter, we used to say, boy, it was really newsy this day. Because in it, like, I have the letters when my children were born. I have the letter from the day that I got married.
Every single day.
Every single day. And then as he got older, it was twice a week, but it was that stamp. It was, and so now that they're gone, I really remember what that feels like. Sometimes they were funny, you know, or whatever, but a lot of it was news. But I also think it's really important to send something that's handwritten with a signature that somebody has to see. They open it up, they read it. I had someone at school the other day, I had to run to the post office to get a stamp. And they chuckled. They were like, I can't tell you the last time I was at the post office.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah, we're in the process of renovating our offices downtown Harrisburg and painting and all that kind of stuff. And it's caused me to go through a bunch of files and have to throw things away to get, or go through things. I'm not throwing a lot away because I'm a sentimental kind of guy.
Yes,
but
you are.
a lot of it is holding on to letters that I got from people, which bring back memories from back and the relationships that existed there. And the thoughtfulness of those people to write something kind or whatever, or challenging or whatever, is really that's part of the benefit of those letters versus the Instagrams and all the rest of that kind of stuff, the Snapchats that disappear, and you don't have any, they disappear, and that's a challenge. I remember when my son Wes was up at college, and he had just gotten an apartment, and he was late in his rent or something, needed money for it, and he said, I'll meet you halfway, you can hand me the check. I said, what do you think about if I just put it in the mail? And he's like, gee, I never thought of that. I didn't know you could send things.
Right.
So I didn't teach my children well, didn't even think about the mail, and the post office actually can get things from one place to another.
30 seconds, close us down here, just on the idea of the art of writing a letter. And then as a Christian, you know, the Bible is a love letter, right, isn't it?
It is a love letter. I have a folder in my office that is just packed full of cards and letters I've received over the years. And when I get one, I put it in there, and oftentimes putting it in there makes me pull the folder out and just look through. And I'm reminded of the intensity of our lives together and how important that is. We should not shy away from the intense moments of life. And I think we need to dive into them, and I think letter writing is part of that.
And you don't get that scrolling, that same experience. Thank you all for sharing. It was a wonderful conversation. Well, coming up on Morning Light, many people reach out to their pastor when they lose a loved one, but who can a pastor turn to when tragedy strikes? A Pennsylvania pastor is going to share how he processed grief following the loss of his wife in a traffic accident. You're watching Morning Light on Lighthouse TV.
Pastors are generally the first person a Christian will reach out to in the face of tragedy. But who can a pastor turn to? A Pennsylvania pastor lost his wife of 34 years in a tragic traffic accident. But he used his grief to help others face their pain. Joining me now to share his story is Pastor Tom Budzowski. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you talk to us about what happened April 23rd, 2010?
Yes, I had just kissed my wife goodbye. She was actually one of several ladies that was hosting a women's ministry event in Middletown at a church for over 42 churches. And so I went off to drive school bus, and she went to the airport to pick up the special speaker. And Sandra Palmer picked her up and was heading back towards Eisenhower Boulevard to take her out to dinner, and then to put her up in her lodging at the Holiday Inn there at the Turnpike entrance. And so it was a Friday night, they got tangled up in a lineup of traffic where 283 splits apart and turns into 83 North. Our vehicle ended up being the last vehicle in line of stopped traffic. And there was an independent truck driver driving a 40-foot box truck coming in from Lancaster, and people had passed him way back the highway because they believe he was dozing. But he ended up coming up to the stop line of traffic, never saw it because he was sleeping, and they were hit behind and ushered into eternity at 55 miles an hour.
Oh my
So
goodness.
the accident happened at 5 p.m. and they shut down the highway. I never got notified by a personal visit from a state policeman and my son-in-law who worked the switchboard at the state police at 9 o'clock at night.
And what was your reaction?
Well, it's kind of just a numbing thing at first. I don't know why. I do know what I asked them. I said, well, was it her fault? When they told me that, you know, she'd been in an accident and she was not, you know, had died. And, but it hadn't. They said she hadn't done anything wrong. She was just sitting there in traffic, probably conversing with the speaker because she didn't know her personally, only through emails, and that she'd picked up from the airport. And just that quick, ushered into eternity.
We never know. Oh my goodness.
We don't.
I can't imagine going through this. How did God help you through this tragedy?
Mainly it was just my relationship with the Lord. It goes back to your faith and how deep it runs. My wife and I had a great understanding about death. Only weeks before this, around a Sunday family dinner, had it come up, the subject, and what would happen to me if something happened to her, and what would happen to her if something happened to me. And her response when asked if something happened to her, when we brought it up, she says, I think you'll be okay. And, you know, after the event and after the loss, those words reverberated for months afterwards, you know, that as an encouragement. You know, you lose your partner, your spouse.
Your best friend.
Your best friend, exactly. And so that, and like I say, the faith, you know, I love Christian music. I play guitar and sing and just spent very personal time with the Lord. I would not have had to go through it without the Lord and having that component. You know, just reading over the scriptures. And even at that, the music seemed to do more, the Christian music. And just, you know, being around family. Family was around for a week. They all lived with me. I have 5 daughters with their families. And so, you know, when they left, then you're on your own.
Reality sets in.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
What did you learn about God's strength?
I learned that His strength is everlasting, that there's always hope in God no matter what you go through, and that He is the sustainer, and He's the one that will restore you. It's not an overnight occurrence, but He will do it as long as we keep our relationship close to Him.
What advice would you have for someone watching who may be going through something similar?
Draw yourself close to the Lord, because I would not have wanted to gone through it without having Him as the shepherd of my soul. And also not isolating yourself, keeping yourself open to people. And believe it or not, many people hide a tragedy such as this underground, but it's best to keep on telling the story. And, you know, even if it's helpful to other people, you know, that have gone through similar things.
It helped you through this healing
Yes, it
process.
did. Yes, it did.
And we do want to talk about Hope's journey, something that came out of this tragedy. We do need to take a break, but we will talk to you in our next segment. So we do have to take this break, but we will talk about Hope's journey in our next segment. We are back in 1 minute. Welcome back. In our last segment, Pastor Tom Budzowski shared how he grieved following the tragic loss of his wife, Gloria. Through that tragedy, he created a forum for widows and widowers to process their emotions. Thanks for being with us again. Let's talk about Hope's journey. What is its mission?
Its mission is basically to identify widows and widowers in the church and to have a place and a time for them to come. And basically, our startup meeting was a meet and greet where we always have a little bit of food and just time just to talk with one another. And then if they'll open up and just share their story. Because once again, it's so important that the more that I share the story, even to date with other people, the more the healing takes place. And then in turn, you're helping people because they may have gone through something similar, or, wow, there's people that have had more tragic loss than even myself.
So I'm sure you're seeing people in all stages of grief.
Yes, yes. The lady that is working with me, she had lost her husband, I believe, 3 years ago. So that's the whole thing of the ministry, to get people to come. And it's very hard to identify widows in the church. Some they're just in the church and you have no clue. And so they have come, many of them have come, and even a few from outside that found out that the church had. It's a ministry that's just gaining ground quickly in all our churches and in different forms. Some are using Grief Share program, and but we just wanted to customize it for the church. So.
And I'm sure you're seeing highs and lows, from people when you see them. You said this is once a month.
Yes.
How do you really weave the gospel into everything you do?
Well, it's basically you keep it centered around God. I mean, first of all, it's in the church, so it's not an outside support group, but also bringing in your relationship with the Lord as you're sharing. The leaders, myself, and the lady that helps me with it, and you're just laying it out, and as long as you lay it out as a testimony format, people understand that God needs to be in the equation. That he has got to be in the equation, and he's the healer, so he's the only one that can heal us from the inside out.
What type of difference do you see that you're making?
I think it's an opening up of widows to even come to the place where they're serving in other places in the church. Because of feeling comfortable and realizing they're not alone in their journey. And wherever they are in the journey of grief, that they, even in the midst of that journey, can help people and have God, and develop a relationship with God and help people, which is the great commandments, loving God and loving others.
Yeah, that's something that will definitely help you through this. It's helping you through this. How can we pray for this group and for you?
You can pray that God will open up the hearts of widows, some who have bore the grief so long. Some will not even release it because of not having a relationship with the Lord. And so therefore, we need barriers to break down, because there's still widows in our church that have not, are not opening up. And sometimes the hurt runs very deep. And so it's only God that can do it. So prayer would be to open up hearts.
I know that we have a group in our church too where they do something, I believe it is once a month, but you're right, it's not something you can do alone.
No, you cannot. You cannot. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for what you're doing, and we will continue to pray for you and Hope's Journey.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And for more information about Hope's Journey, check out hbg1st.org. Stay with us. We are back right after the break. Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, Christabel Braden is a singer-songwriter who fought through multiple traumatic brain injuries. Her incredible journey has taken her from hospital rooms to relearning life's daily tasks. You will not want to miss her powerful testimony of freedom, healing, and love. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Thank you, Deborah. Well, her name is Charlotte Fawcett, and for decades she and her husband Jean were stationed as missionaries to East Africa and later to South America. Somewhere along the way, Mrs. Fawcett mastered the art of writing. That's writing. I mean, handwritten, in a card, in a letter, in both English and in Spanish. Her cards and correspondence to hundreds, and I'd say by today's standards, probably even thousands of people over the years, have been the precise word of encouragement at the exact moment of need. A wedding, a birthday, never forgets birthdays, anniversaries, a line of scripture, a sentence packed with hope. Occasionally, she's even carried that encouragement even into her 90s to social media. But it hasn't stopped Charlotte Fawcett from sending a handwritten card with, yes, a live stamp. It's an extraordinary act of selflessness repeated years on end. Maybe you know someone like Charlotte. Maybe you're thinking of giving up your ministry of writing notes. Don't even think about it. If you haven't done it lately, pick up the pen, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and mail that note of encouragement. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching today. Take a minute to check on your neighbors. And God willing, we'll see you right back here again tomorrow morning.